right, hello and welcome to another Kid Factory University course. The Kid Factory is a not for profit community project founded by me, Cindy Robinson, in an effort to make mental health resources more available to more families. And particularly leading edge mental health resources because the landscape of kids and even adults' mental health has changed drastically, especially since the pandemic. So I'm out here trying to find the best cutting edge resources and get them to you. And one of the most affordable ways that I'm able to do that is through these Kid Factory University courses. So you're going to receive a recording each week. You have a week after receiving that recording to send me any questions, comments, ask me for advice. I'm here for you. Just shoot them over. So as you're listening to this course, any questions that come to mind, I recommend having a pen and a notepad and just jotting down any questions you have, and feel free to shoot me an email with any and all questions, comments, or suggestions. This course in particular is Parenting Teens. And FYI, my name is Cindy Robinson. I forgot to say that. And I am a parent and teen coach. So I support parents who might be struggling or maybe dealing with their own trauma and how it affects their parenting. And I also specialize in working with teens, particularly with parents and or teens who have anxiety, OCD, or ADHD, but kind of work with a few other different specialties. But in my work with teens, I realized I definitely needed to create a virtual group just for kind of going over the basics of teens. There are lots of questions that come up in my coaching over and over again, a lot of common themes. And so I tried to take those common themes and pull them into one course, and that's this course, Parenting Teens, an honestly helpful group about the hardest phase of parenting. So you're going to receive an email every Wednesday about this course, and this is course number 1. So this session is titled Emotions, Hormones, and Behavior. We're basically going to be talking this time about the physiology of the teen brain. I think it's really important to always put science first, physiology and research first. We need to understand the machine before we work with the machine. So we're going to be talking this whole course about the physiology that plays into making teens do the things that they do. All right, so first we have to start with the brain. That seems kind of important. The teen brain. So I'm going to go through these different sections of the brain and kind of explain what they do and how that looks on the other side of it as the parent of a teen. So first we're going to start with the prefrontal cortex. It's this big pink area right here. The prefrontal cortex is responsible for logic and impulse control. You hear people talk about the frontal lobe. It's pretty interchangeably used, but the prefrontal cortex is just a little more specific of an area. But that frontal lobe, it's the very last part of the brain to develop. It's the part that evolved in us much later in life, or in evolution, I guess. And it is all about logic and impulse control. So since this part of the brain is not developed until much later on, it's not playing a huge role in your teen's life right now. This develops up to age 25. So where logic and impulse control lives is not going to be a big team player in helping your teen out very much right now. So it's nice to be aware of that's why they have maybe not the most logical decisions, and maybe they lack some impulse control, particularly if in addition to that they have like ADHD or something like that makes impulse control even more difficult. But that's why they're not thinking that logical right now. That whole frontal lobe of the brain is still under construction. I'm going to move down to another really important part of the brain, and that's the amygdala. The amygdala that we all have is the fight or flight center of the brain, which now we actually know that there are 4 responses to that the amygdala is responsible for, and that's fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. So the amygdala basically gets information, and when something is considered a threat, it's the threat detector, and it decides how to respond to that threat. So it's the fear center. And fight is, you're going to fight the tiger. Flight is you're going to run from the tiger. Freeze is you're going to play dead, freeze up. And then fawn is you're going to make friends with the tiger so that maybe it won't attack you again. And I think there are a lot of us fawns out there, and people with anxiety tend to fawn, but we don't really talk about that fear response very much. So the amygdala is going to be really important because you're going to see these types of behaviors. Particularly if your teen is struggling with anxiety, then their amygdala is going to be playing a huge role in their decision making and their behavior. So it's important to know that amygdala is what is firing off whenever they're kind of freaking out about something or coping with some anxiety. Next thing to talk about is the basal ganglia. That's up here, this little green guy across here. Basal ganglia is all about keeping balance. Oops, sorry. It's all about keeping balance. So basically what it does is when it feels like you're out of balance, it tries to compensate with that by coming up with ideas for how to help you keep balance. So if you feel like you're losing control, you might try to find ways to gain control. That's where, if you see OCD, if your teen struggles with OCD behaviors, the basal ganglia plays a big role in that. It also has a little bit to do with impulsive decisions because it sort of sporadically tries to keep balance. So, hey, we're not feeling that good. I want to do something impulsively to boost my serotonin. The basal ganglia is kind of playing a role in them making that decision. So, hey, maybe I'm going to jump off this, bridge into a lake or something with my friends. Maybe the basal ganglia is going to be part of like, hey, I'm not feeling that excited right now. Let's do something impulsive to bring up the excitement and boost my serotonin. So that's important to know that that's a big player in your teen's brain. The thalamus is important in everybody's brain, but it is the information processor. So the thalamus acts automatically. You can't control this. There's nothing you can do about what it does with information. But basically, the thalamus is where information is processed. So when you see the world and you interpret it the way, however you might interpret it, it's the thalamus who is interpreting. So it's deciding, am I sending this to the amygdala? Is this a fear response that is appropriate? Do I need balance? Do I need to send this to the basal ganglia? Is this what is this experience? The information first gets sent somewhere by the thalamus, and like I said before, that's done without any real say on the part of the person who owns that brain. It's more what our response is to what the thalamus decides that helps teach our brain what we actually want it to do. So if the thalamus, for example, is always sending things to the fear center, that's where you're going to see people with anxiety. Or if the thalamus is always sending things, and creating a sad response, that's going to be people with depression. Seeing the world through rose-colored glasses, that's the thalamus. It kind of automatically sends information to different parts of the brain, and you can't control it. But what is important is that we know that we can't control that. And instead, how do we respond to the fact that our brain might respond in a fearful, fear response type of way all the time? Well, if we're aware of the fact that, okay, that's my thalamus sending everything to my amygdala, it sees everything as a threat, that makes it a little bit easier, right? To say, okay, maybe I need to slow down. My brain currently tends to thrive off fear because it thinks I like fear because I've been rewarding it every time I'm fearful. How about we try a different approach? So that thalamus is automatic, but it is important to note that, it's the information processor. It decides before it goes through any sort of logical part of the brain where your emotions need to go. Now, the last thing that's important, particularly in teen brains, is the hippocampus. The hippocampus is basically where memories are made and things are turned into memory. And this is on hyper alert during adolescence. So that's why a lot of your childhood memories are actually during adolescence. You may think of them as, oh, maybe I was like 5 or 6, but a lot of those memories that you actually have were probably in middle school or high school. And that's because, honestly, it's kind of like that hippocampus is cracked wide open during this phase of life. It's growing rapidly, it's consuming information, it's able to contain more information. That's why you're able to, if if life's going okay, you're able to retain a lot in school. That's why, college happens at that age, because this is the age that you really are strong at retaining information, um, especially new information. So it's important to note that, this is the time that memories are being made. This is also a really great time to learn new things and consume new information. And that is often why we see that our teenagers are the ones who are calling out social injustices, or, holding us to a higher standard as parents. They often become very critical of our parenting and notice every flaw, if you haven't noticed that. And it's honestly because they're able to see the world in a unique way. And we need that, but we also, got to rein that in a little bit. So these are the really important pieces of the brain to note, that these are all playing a role in your child's development at this age. Okay, so what's really important is to understand the rate of your brain development. So I call this page the race to brain development, because it's important to know that your child's brain, you think of like they're born and then the brain grows and it all kind of grows at the same pace and then they're grown up, right? But that's not how it works. Think of your brain as having two parts. One is the frontal lobe, which is going to be the more human mammalian brain. It's all that logical thinking. It's what made us able to, start fire and build cities and do stuff like that. And then it's what separates us from a lot of different species. The reptilian brain has been there since the beginning of time. That's where, breathing is regulated, and impulses are made, and quick caveman type decisions exist in the reptilian brain. And the reptilian brain is automatic. There's no controlling what it does. And then the frontal lobe is there to go, okay, how should we respond to this? So your fear center is in your reptilian brain, but your frontal lobe can go, you know what? You're afraid to go to this party, but you've gone to 15 other parties and most of the time you have a good time. So let's just go. That's kind of how those two work together. Is your reptilian brain will be like, oh my God, what if this party's a disaster? Or, oh, what if no one wants to talk to me? And then the logical brain comes in and goes, typically, you're probably not going to die. So let's give it a try. It's important, though, to look at the different age brackets for where brain development is at that time. So I put 4 different ages and stages so you could kind of get a better idea of what your teen is experiencing at their age. So if we look at a 3-year-old, their reptilian brain is much more developed than their frontal lobe. And that's because they're little, but their brain is not developing at the same pace. That reptilian brain was pretty well formed in the womb. And then the frontal lobe has some catching up to do. So, they're kind of born with that reptilian brain. That frontal lobe is not at all developing. And around age 3, you see that there's this gap. That is why you see, quite honestly, that 3-year-olds aren't logical thinkers. You have tantrums. They want what they want and they want it now. They get upset that you threw away their dirty tissue. You see some illogical behavior in 3-year-olds. So that is why their logical brain hasn't really even begun to catch up with their reptilian brain, but it's working on it. And so when you look at about age 8, those two are evening out. The reptilian brain had kind of already developed, and now that frontal lobe is developing. And around 8 years old, this sort of window between about 7 and 11, they start to even out the frontal lobe development and the reptilian brain development. Certainly not a fully developed brain, but they just sort of level out at the same time. That's why, you think about like when your kid was 8 or 10 years old and they were kind of little. They had it together. They had their stuff together a lot more. They were a lot more logical thinkers. They made more sense. And you probably started feeling as a parent like, I've got this. Like, I am killing it as a parent. Maybe you didn't. If your child is struggling with something like ADHD, then that brain is not going to be in alignment for quite some time. But in general, kids are more logical at this age, and I personally felt like I had knocked it out of the park. I had this little adult living in my house. Made total sense. Well, don't get too comfortable, because all of a sudden there's a slow in growth of the frontal lobe and a rapid growth of the reptilian brain around adolescence. And the reason that happens is because their brain needs to be open for big ideas. They're getting ready to be adults. They need to be able to consume information. They need to get ready to go out on their own. So that reptilian brain is like very ready to grow. When that frontal lobe is done developing, your worldview is complete, right? So you need these experiences so you can build your worldview. So we don't want the frontal lobe to be developed until they're older and they've had enough life experiences. If the frontal lobe was done developing at 5 years old, they're going to think the world is sunshine and rainbows, and life is going to smack them upside the head pretty hard. So as frustrating as it is for us, we actually don't want that frontal lobe to develop until later on. We want them to have lots of rich life experiences and really have a realistic view of the world before that frontal lobe kind of closes off their worldview. So at 16, what do they look? They look a little bit more like a toddler, right? They look a little bit more like a 3-year-old. Tantrums are back. Illogical thinking is back. Getting angry for what appears to be no reason is back. So you welcome to the toddler years all over again. And that's what adolescence can feel like, is that you've got a toddler. Your kid no longer makes sense. They're making terrible decisions. They didn't think anything through. They aren't bathing themselves properly. They're very much back into those sort of toddler years. But there's hope. Look at the 4th stage of development, and what do you see? You see around age 25, it's going to vary vastly from teen to teen, but around age 25, that frontal lobe will finally catch up and finish developing, and you will have a fully formed adult with a complete worldview who will be a much more logical thinker and probably will turn around and apologize to you for a lot of things. So that is really important. I hope that you understand this race to brain development. Certainly send me any questions that you have. But I love this slide because it really helps you see that they basically are toddlers again. All right, now, so we talked about brain. That's brain stuff, brain development. Well, brains aren't just separate parts from the rest of the body. It's important that we also understand hormones. So there are 2 hormones that really take the stage when it comes to adolescence. We can talk about some other ones, but these are just the 2 big players. And that's estrogen and testosterone. I'm sure you've heard of that. I'm sure you're aware that they're raging in your child, but then what do you do with that? So, of course, estrogen and testosterone, they are the sex hormones. They play a role in baby making and in adolescence wanting to make babies or do the things that make babies. But that's kind of all anybody ever has given them credit for, is just being sex hormones. But that's like not at all true. And recently we've discovered some really fascinating stuff when it comes to estrogen and testosterone. So the important thing to note is when your child goes through puberty, they get a rush of these hormones based on the sex that they are. They get a rush of really both of them, quite honestly, but for males, it's particularly testosterone, and for females, it's particularly estrogen. The important thing to know is that hormones, it's not so much, like, oh, now they have hormones. Like, oh, now they have as many as I have. First of all, they get a rush, and their levels are going to be higher during puberty. So it's important to note that they're not just like you once they go through puberty. It's actually quite crazy there for a while. And it's also important to note that it's a change in hormones that often causes the behavior issues. So it's not so much that they're getting this rush of estrogen, which is already enough, but it's the fact that they've gone through this big shift that really throws the brain off and really causes problems. So it's the rush of hormones plus the fact that they are at higher levels that make things get a little crazy. But what's really fascinating and really important about this drastic increase is that both estrogen and testosterone, we have now learned, play a huge role in being pioneers of your teen's brain circuitry, which means they pave the neuron superhighways. Okay, so what does that mean? your brain is full of neural pathways, which means little connections, little highways that make decisions, essentially, that make up who you are, what you're probably going to decide. Once you make one action and your brain gets a reward for that action, it wants to do it more. So I'll go through a positive example and then I'll go through a negative example, but then you'll start to see how the neuron superhighways work. So for example, on a positive note, let's say that you take up gardening, okay? And so you go out, you garden, you spend an hour in the dirt, maybe you get a little tired and sweating, but then you go and, you step back and you look at the garden and you're like, oh, that is beautiful. Okay, so then in that case, the neural pathway was like, all right, this person likes to be outside, they like to garden, they're working hard, we're a little bit stressed right now, but now they're stepping back and they're enjoying the fruits of their labor. So that was all a little neural pathway of what that made you want to do the garden, that made you, work hard at it and then step back and admire your work. So your brain's like, oh, we like this. You rewarded me for doing this. This felt good for you, so let's keep doing it. Now here's how that can work in a way that maybe can be annoying. So let's say that you're, getting ready to do something challenging, like you got a big meeting for work, and all of a sudden your brain goes, well, what if everyone hates you? It's just trying to warn you about like, oh, what if everyone hates this presentation? What's the game plan? Let me know what the game plan is. Is that something you're worried about? Now, if you just go, no, I'm not worried about that. Like, thanks for that intrusive thought, but no, thank you. Then it's going to go, okay, that was not helpful. Me making that suggestion was not helpful. So we're going to not, we're not using this superhighway in the brain. But if you go, oh God, what if they do hate it? Oh, well, what if, if you go down the what if path, then your brain goes, oh, they needed that. That was helpful for me to warn them about something bad that might happen. They like that. Let's think of other things that we could warn them about. And then it might be like, well, what if you stutter? Or what if everyone hates it? Or what if like you get fired because you don't know your stuff? So then that neural pathway got rewarded because you said, yes, I'm going to validate that thought. Let's go down that highway. So basically, when your kid is a teen, those neuron superhighways, those little pathways are really first being really paved and formed. And estrogen and testosterone play a role in building those highways. It turns out that they create something, oh gosh, I can't remember what it's called, but they create something that makes the neural pathways like a easier to drive down. I can't think of what it's called, but think of like a conductor for electricity. And so they kind of like, line that neural pathway with a conductor to make the electricity in the path even faster. So now we're instantly afraid when we're about to do a meeting, or we're instantly gratified just by looking at our garden. So they basically make these neural pathways easier to travel and faster. They also participate in pruning, synaptic pruning, which means any neural pathways that you're not using, they start identifying them. Estrogen and testosterone, they play a role in this. They start finding, okay, this person never really uses, this part of this neural pathway, or they never really reward us when we, do this. Then it starts pruning and closing that synaptic superhighway off. Now, it doesn't prune it completely. You can build neural pathways, but it takes a lot more work once it's kind of not been used for a while. So estrogen and testosterone make like everything every way that you work, the way that you respond to things, whether you're rewarded by things, whether you validate the fear centers of your brain, whether you validate the serotonin hits. This is the age when all of that is really, your whole brain circuitry is really being developed in a permanent adult kind of way. And it's always happening your whole life, but estrogen and testosterone come in and they kind of amplify all of that and make it more like this is the blueprint of how we do things. So that's why, what does this look like in real life? I'm talking very scientifically. Well, it's going to look like in an increased ability to think deeply. It's going to look like doing really well at learning new things and being better at retaining memories. So that is why you see that your teen is going to be way more invested in going down rabbit holes, whether it be a depression rabbit hole or just a fascination with some topic, than they are taking a bath, brushing their teeth maybe, or doing other things that are kind of considered more logical or meeting basic needs. They're going to sit up all night long down some rabbit hole online and not think about whether they have to get up in the morning. Because right now their brain is like trying to figure out, who are you? How do you work? And it's consuming a lot of their time and energy, because they are essentially laying the foundation for their adult selves. And so we really want to capitalize on this time in their life because it is really exciting and new. They're pioneering in their own brain, honestly. But if they pioneer and make some really unhealthy habits and really unhealthy neural pathways, it's going to take a lot longer to reconstruct that in adulthood. Some of y'all may have had to do that yourselves. If you've ever had to rewire your brain to be less anxious or to, not be prone to depression, it ain't easy. So it's important to know this is when that's happening so that we can better respond to our kids. So we're truly responding to what's going on with them and not just the behavior that we see in front of us. All right, so we're going to touch on behavior a little bit, but we will talk about it a lot more in the next session, as far as how we respond. But I do want to talk a little bit about just behavior. So, why do they act like this? Lord have mercy, why do they act like this? A really important saying that I'm going to say a million times is behavior is communication. It may be really, really awful, terrible communication that nobody wants to listen to, but it is communication. I mean, that is just the deal. And the sooner that we can accept that their behavior is communication, even if it's poor communication, it really helps take the personal aspect of it, of taking things personally out of it and just trying to get to the root of what is it that they are communicating. So if they are acting out or if they are making bad choices, what I suggest doing first is looking at what need might not be being met that they are trying to communicate. Okay? And so, what needs do humans have? This little graphic right here, my happy pyramid, this is based on tons and tons of extensive research to figure out what do humans need to be happy. Well, what we find is first, your basic needs have to be met. If you don't have food, water, shelter, all of this, how can you worry about happiness and fulfillment and contentment? Like basic needs have to be met first. And I'm sure all your kids have food, water, sleep, air, and safety, but I want to talk about them a little more in depth so that when they're acting out in a certain way, are we looking at those basic needs in a more in-depth way? Starting with food. Do they only eat things that deprive their body of nutrients? And do they eat enough? We have a real problem right now of kids with disordered eating. It spiked massively during the pandemic. And I think it's obvious why, but also confusing. But take a look at their food intake. Are they eating a decent amount? Are they eating at decent times? Do they have a healthy relationship with food? So think about that in a more in-depth way. Next, water. They need water. And I think around this age, they start drinking like Red Bull and coffee, and that's pretty much it. Are they getting, let's say 64 ounces? I think it's actually like 40% of your body weight, but try to get 64 ounces in them. Emphasize the importance of water. These things make a way bigger difference than you could possibly imagine. Sleep. This is one of the biggest ones. You can't imagine the amount of behavior or impulsive struggles that you can eliminate by ensuring that your teen is getting sleep. And the main way that you can do that is take the devices out of the room at night. I cannot emphasize this enough. Take all the devices out of the room every night. But they need to be getting a minimum of 8 hours of sleep. I think teens, adolescents really thrive better with like 10 hours. They actually do need more sleep during this phase than any other time in their lives. Well, I think aside from infancy, sorry. But they need a minimum of 8 hours of sleep. That will eliminate so many problems. You really don't realize how much sleep impacts your child's behavior, because that frontal lobe's not developed anyway, and now you've deprived it of sleep, which is how it restores itself. Like, you're asking for a disaster. Okay, air. Of course, they have air to survive, but deep breathing. Breathing is important. Learning deep breathing tools, learning deep breathing techniques. There's a wonderful book called Breathe. I will share it in the email as far as resources. It's a good book. You can read the book, but honestly, the book is worth flipping to the back, where they walk you through breathing exercises. The audiobook is even better because you can turn it on and do the breathing exercises with your eyes closed. But they give you breathing techniques that are amazing. And deep breathing can get you a long way. I cannot tell y'all how much this stuff matters. Like, you might be sick of hearing it, or like, yeah, I know, but I'm telling you, it can change your life. Now, safety in your home. Safety, shelter is a basic need. I am sure that your child is safe. But if you're taking this course, I doubt you're like an abusive household. But just, double check that you are creating a safe space for your child, or that anywhere that they're going is a safe space. But of course they need that. They need to feel safe at home. Okay. Once those basic needs have been met, if you can go through those and go, yeah, they eat well, they drink plenty of water, they get plenty of sleep, they, know some deep breathing techniques, and I got a safe home. Well, those are the basic needs to survive. Next, we're looking at the next tier of the pyramid, the yellow part. Basic needs for the human intrinsic needs for happiness. This is based on a huge study. And what it found was that there were 3 basic needs that every human has in order to be happy. One is feeling like you are living authentically. So you are being yourself in front of other people. You are living true to who you are. You feel like you are living authentically. 2 is you are accepted by a group. It does not matter how big that group is. I guess maybe 2 or more people. But you need to feel accepted by a group. So you're living authentically, you're being yourself, and you're being accepted for who you are. And 3rd, which was a surprising, not surprising one, is you need to feel competent at something. Now, I'll tell you, these 3 human intrinsic needs are hard to meet for teenagers. Like, it's not a great time in life to be living authentically. Like, they all want to fit in. They all feel like they stand out. They all feel different. They all feel like no one likes them and everyone's staring at them. It's hard to live authentically. And then on top of that, to put yourself out there authentically and get accepted by a group, that's all teenagers are thinking about. They're searching to be accepted. And that is where you see some of these behaviors in order to get accepted by a group that seem outside of their character. This is desperate need to feel accepted. And then feeling competent. This is a really important one. You probably can't feel very competent at very much if your parents are managing a lot of your life. If they're looking at your homework schedule and asking, did you do it? If they're making lots of suggestions about, hey, you should join this club or that club, or you should do this sport or that. If you're kind of behind them, always helping out with suggestions, you can't feel confident like that. In fact, there's a study I want to share about, they looked at the cortisol levels, and cortisol is basically known as the stress hormone. They looked at the cortisol levels of kids and their parents. They gave the kids a challenging activity to do, and they told the parents not to help, knowing that they full well were going to help anyway. Well, with the parents who helped the kids while they were doing this challenging activity, the parents' cortisol levels went down when they helped. The kids' cortisol levels went up when they helped. So what does that tell us? It tells us that it does not help our kids for us to help them. It doesn't. So if you are trying to help your child unsolicited, so giving them unsolicited advice, you're basically saying, this is stressful for me. I can't handle this. I'm going to pass my stress over to you. Because they essentially took that stress hormone off their shoulders and put it on their child's. So I want you to think about that next time about, how much am I a helpful, I'm doing air quotes, parent? I struggle with this too, by the way. I'm not being judgy Judgerson. I catch myself doing this all the time. And then I have to remember that. I have to picture myself with this bowling ball of cortisol. And when I try to be helpful and make suggestions or step in, then I picture myself handing my child the bowling ball and saying, now do this activity. And I want you to hold this for me too. Sometimes having that visualization helps put me into check. Okay, so then the very top of this happy pyramid is self-love. And this is the icing on the cake. Humans can be happy, feeling authentically, feeling accepted, and feeling competent. But what's really awesome is that once all these needs really come together, they result in this top part of self-love. And honestly, I really have a firm belief that you can only accept as much love as you're willing to give yourself. And I think when we allow our kids to have these needs met or to meet these needs for themselves, what's going to result is a really pure sense of self-love. And that's really what we want for our kids, because from there, they can create the life that they want because they feel they deserve a nice life. We don't really have to do much else than that. If we can help cultivate a situation where they can have self-love and self-compassion, it's only up from there. All right. So, behavior. We'll talk about this more tomorrow. I'm just going to go through this because, you can feel like a lot of this is, it sounds like a bunch of things I have to do. So, if you got a kid who's just driving you nuts and acting out and being ugly, I do want to be clear. Am I saying that they just get to do whatever they want because behavior is a communication? No. Not at all. We're going to talk about this more next week, but you make a family contract. And it should include what your expectations are, what your needs are. You should listen to their needs and have a clear agreement. We will talk about this more at the next session, but no, they don't get to do whatever they want. You get to lay out what your expectations and what your needs are, and they have to live within those boundaries, but with keeping in mind to give them the ability to meet those intrinsic needs. So what are the key takeaways? All right, so first is that the teen brain development lends itself to low impulse control and high emotion. So basically, how your teen's brain is built right now is a recipe for disaster, because they're going to have low impulse control, high emotion. They're going to want to fulfill emotional needs on the fly without any real thought put into it. And that's never a good thing. That's how they're set up. Hormones play an important role in creating the adult brain. So testosterone and estrogen are more than just sex hormones. They are literally, during this phase, building the superhighways of their brain, building those neural pathways, which is so important because it is laying the foundation for how they're going to interact in the world as adults. And also, behavior is communication. Say it again. Behavior is communication. And lastly, and we will talk about this more at the next session in more detail, is make a family pact. So just be ready to come in. I will send you the resources for the family pact in this session's email. And I want you to start looking it over and bring it to the next session. And we will talk about making a family pact. All right, that is the first session for parenting teens. Remember to send me any and all emails, suggestions, questions, whatever you have. You have my full attention for the next week about this topic, and then we will move on to the next topic. If you need to check out my website or anything like that, it's thekidfactory.org. If you need to reach out to me via email, it's thekidfactoryatl@gmail.com. Thanks and have a good day.